everybody, it's Keren here from tuppencecolored.co.uk. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. Now, if you're looking at the card in my hand here, and you're thinking, hang on, is this a repeat? I'm sure I saw this card being made a week or so ago. You're not wrong. But the project today isn't about the card, it is about an envelope to keep it in. Now, I normally film all of the project, and then at the end I come back and I film the beginning and the end, the intro and the outro separately, so that I've got all my project completed. This actually didn't come out exactly as planned, so I'm calling this a backwards envelope. All right, and there were a few changes of design direction along the way, so if you stay with me, I'll show you what happened. These are the things I'm going to be using today. I've got some card in Peekaboo Peach. Now I only need a tiny little scrap. This is actually way too much, but it just happened to be what I had handy, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to stamp with the Moon Baby stamps, and I'm going to use basic grey ink to do that. I've got Whisper White Baker's Twine, and I've got a 3/4 inch circle punch. I've also got some brads. Now these are ones that Stampin Up used to sell. They are now retired, but you know, brads are readily available. And I've got a couple of pieces of envelope paper in Peekaboo Peach. Before I start cutting the envelope, I want to make sure that I've measured the card that's going to go in the envelope, to make sure that I make my envelope big enough. So I've got a piece of grid paper here, which is convenient and is handy. And I'm just going to make a few little marks on it, and I'm going to try and line that up as square as I can. And I'm going to just mark just outside the edge of that letter B, which is the widest point of the card on this side, and I'm going to put a mark just on the outside of where that corner is. Alright, so between there and there are the two outer edges. And same thing along here, I'm going to put a mark on that bottom line, so that is the lower point of my card. And now I want to establish what's the highest point, and I think it's about there. Okay, so now I have my marks and I can start joining them up. I'm working on the inches side of my paper here, but to be honest, for this it doesn't matter if it's inches or centimeters. I think in inches. I'm of an age before we started talking about millimeters and centimeters and things in school, so I can convert. If somebody tells me what something is in millimeters, I'll have a rough idea of how big it is, but in my head I have to convert it to inches. Alright, so I now have the area that I need to fit my card into, but I also want to have a little bit of ease so that the card has room to move around in, basically. And I think if I make it 1/2 inch bigger, okay, so I'm just going to measure that bit, okay, that gives me a little bit of ease in that direction, and a bit 1/2 inch on this edge as well. Alright, now this extra bit that I'm adding on isn't for any sort of overlap. This is just to assess the size of the space I need to fit the card into. Is that making sense? I hope so. Right, so now I'm going to measure, and that is coming out at 8 1/4 inches. Okay, so there to there is 8 1/4 inches, and that way it's 8 inches. Before I started this, I did have a think about making the envelope using the envelope punch board, which would have been easy. The problem is that the card is so big that the paper doesn't actually fit on to the envelope punch board. It would need an extension on the end of it. So I'm going to make an envelope in two parts. So the front part is going to be like that, and it's going to have extra flap pieces on it. And to wrap around the back part, which is going to have a flap to fold over the top. Okay, so for the front, I need it to be that size plus an inch on either side there and half an inch on there. So I need it to be 9 1/4 plus by 8 1/2 plus. Okay, so there's an extra flap on here of half an inch, and there's half an inch here, and there's half an inch here. Right, so that's that piece. So that needs to be, let me just write it down, 9 1/4 by 8 1/2, and the 8 1/2 is the up and down measurement. All right. Okay, so for the back piece, now that needs to be 8 1/4 inches, because I don't want to add anything else onto that. But I want to add a bit onto the top part here for the flap over. And I think, how deep shall I make it? Let's have a look. Well, if I make it 1.5 inches, it'll come to about there, which looks about right to me. So I'm going to make that at 1.5 inches. So this needs to be 8 inches. So I need to make that at 9 1/2. Okay, now those two measurements are very similar. So when I'm making the envelope, I need to be very careful that I don't mix them up. Here are my two pieces of envelope paper, and to make sure I know what I'm doing, I've written on the back of them, here are my two pieces of envelope paper, and I've decided that I want my envelope to be with the plain side out. So we've got a plain side and a pattern side. That's my choice. If you prefer to do it the other way around, that's entirely up to you. But to make sure that I keep track of which piece is which, I've written some notes to myself. So I've written on it, this is the front piece, and that the top of the piece is that way. And on this one, I've written that this is the back, and I've marked the bottom edge. They've done those in pencil, but they will be inside the envelope when it's finished, so nobody will know they are there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score half an inch on 3 sides of the front piece. And once I've done that, I will feel much happier, because I will have a better idea of what piece is which. And on this piece, so this is the bottom, so at the top I'm going to score at 1 1/2 inches. Making sure that I'm using my light grey scoring blade and not the dark grey cutting blade, because I've done that before and it's half upsetting when it happens. Okay, so on the back piece, I'm now going to take my corner rounder, and I'm just going to round off those corners. I'm just making sure that that is fitting nicely into the corner there, because it does move around sometimes, and particularly with paper, because card is, as you know, because it's card, is firmer, and the paper has got a tendency to try and slide under the guide, so I'm being very careful with this. Okay, alright, so now I know this is going to be the back of my envelope, and that flap is going to come over the front, and this is going to be the front of my envelope, and those pieces are going to fold around. Just going to snip off these corners, because we shan't want them. Get it right across the edges. And because this is paper, I don't really need a bone folder. Just folding it with my fingers gives me enough of a crease. Maybe when I finish I'll come back with bone folder and sort it all out. I do want to decorate the front of the envelope, and I've got the three little characters from Moon Baby, the bear, the bunny and the sheep, and they're the same characters that I used on the card that's going to go inside, so everything will coordinate. And I'm going to decide whereabouts I'm going to pop them, and I think bottom right hand corner will do fine, and I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the ink to transfer, and there they are. Now I'm not going to do anything else to decorate it. Before I stick the front and back together, I want to work on the circle fasteners, so I'm going to punch out 4 3/4 inch circles of the Peekaboo Peach card. And that's all the card that I need. I told you this was way too much card, didn't I? Okay. And I'm going to put holes in the middle of these. And once I've got one in place, I can use that to line up with the next one. And to be honest, it's not going to matter that much that they line up, so you can just eyeball them. In fact, that's what I'll do for this one. There we go. Now I'm going to put 2 aside for now, because I'm not going to need them straight away. I'm going to bring back the front of my envelope, and I'm going to find where the centre point is, and I'm just going to make a tiny little mark. I don't want to make a big deal of it. And again, with my mule punch, I'm going to come in along that line, and I'm going to make a hole. Right. Okay, so I'm ready to assemble the mechanism now. So I've got 2 of the circles that I've punched, and I'm going to cut a length of baker's twine. I'm going to cut a piece that's about what's that, about 10 inches long, something like that. If it's too long, you can always cut it short, but if it's too short, it'll give you problems. Okay, so I am going to trap. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my brad and I'm going to poke it through the hole in the circle there, and I'm going to open the legs of the brad very slightly because I want to trap that twine between those legs. Can you see that? That's trapped in there, and I'm going to poke those through the hole that I made in the front of the envelope, and close up the legs a bit again so that I can catch them onto my other, it's sort of like a cardboard washer really, on the back of the card. And now when I open out the legs, that is now caught nice and tight underneath that card circle there. So I'm ready now to put the front onto the back. But before I do, I just want to say that I trimmed this down an extra 1/8 of an inch because when I put the 2 of them together, it was a little bit too tight and this was bending a bit. So, okay, so now I'm ready to put the front onto the back. Before I do, I just want to say that I trimmed this down an extra 1/8 of an inch, so that that measurement is now 8 1/8 of an inch, not 8 1/4. And I will make the correction on my blog. Okay. And the reason why I did that was because it was a little bit too much of a snug fit. Now, as you can see, I have tear and tape in place already. So I'm just going to take the backing off, partly off this bottom piece. And I'm going to bring that together, bring that over, and take that black piece off. I want to make sure everything is good and straight, which it is. And now I can just go ahead with gay abandon and take the tape off the other side. There we go. Okay, when I went to put this together, I realised that I had made a bit of a boo-boo. And what I had done, I hadn't left myself. Okay, when I came to put this together, I realised that I had made a bit of a boo-boo in the positioning of my card washers, or whatever you want to call them. 3, 2, 1. Right. When I went to put this together, I realised that I had made a mistake in positioning the card circle that's going to be on the front of the card. I had put it way too near the top of the envelope, which meant that when I closed it up, it was underneath the top flap, and it needs to be there. Okay, it needs to be below it. So that's all right. We can fix it. So it's just going to be a little bit harder than it would have been before. Now I'm going to bring in my 3/4 of an inch circle punch, and I'm going to find where that centre is again. There, okay, I can see that. And I've marked sort of crosshairs on my circle punch so that I can see where the centre is. And I'm just going to cut out. Right, in the end, I needed a 1.5 inch circle punch to get that down as low as I wanted it to. And I also realised that when I designed this, I designed it backwards, because really that should be the back, shouldn't it, not the front. But never mind, it's a design choice. So acid test is, does my card fit inside? And yes, it does. Thank goodness for that. Okay, so I've got 2 tails hanging down here. I'm going to chop that one a bit shorter, but not all the way closed. So I can bring that round, and now I can just wrap my end. Oops, come on, under there. There you go. There you go. That's right. And I can just wrap the ends around, just like that. That'll do. So there it is, and it was very much an exercise in what not to do, I think. And I've run out of Peekaboo Peach envelope paper, so can't do it again. So I'm just going to have to live with it and pretend that I meant it like this all the time. But I hope you've enjoyed this video anyway. And if so, then please do click on that like button, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you think about my mishaps and misadventures. Hop on over to my Facebook page and show me a picture of what you've been up to, why don't you? I'd really like to see it. The details are underneath this video. But for now, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.